What if I told you that 3 of Britain's most powerful queens, across 5 centuries of history, were each connected to a war and to a very unexpected food? One queen grew vegetables in a castle to help feed a nation at war. Another sent a steaming hot drink to dying soldiers on the battlefield. And a third used a humble little cookie to change the course of royal celebrations forever. These are the untold food stories of 3 remarkable queens. And once you hear them, you will never look at British history the same way again. Let's begin. May 8th, 1945. That was the day Germany officially signed its surrender in Berlin. It was Victory in Europe Day. And on that same day, the future Queen Elizabeth II, dressed in military uniform, appeared on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. She stood alongside her parents, her sister, and Prime Minister Winston Churchill, celebrating victory together with the British people. Elizabeth later revealed something about that evening. Her father, King George VI, gave special permission for the 19-year-old princess to change into ordinary clothes and quietly go outside to join the celebrating crowds. For the future queen, this was probably a once-in-a-lifetime experience, just like her earlier experience of farming in the Victory Garden at Windsor Castle. Now, before Elizabeth began her 70-year reign, she was first a princess living through a war. In March 1939, when the fighting broke out on the Western Front of World War II, Princess Elizabeth was only 13 years old. As Germany prepared to launch large-scale bombing attacks, some people suggested sending the princess to Canada for safety, but her mother, Queen Elizabeth, the woman who even Hitler was said to fear, gave this answer: "The children cannot leave without me. I cannot leave without the king, and the king will never leave." Even after Buckingham Palace was bombed 9 times by German forces, the royal couple simply said, "I am glad we were bombed. At least now we can look the people of the East End in the face." So, even during the hardest years of the war, the princess was only sent to Windsor Castle, just outside London. And there, just like countless ordinary people across the country, she took part in what was called the Victory Garden movement. The idea was simple: use empty land, private gardens, public spaces, any available ground, to grow vegetables and ease the food shortage during wartime. This approach was used widely during both World War I and World War II, in Britain, the United States, Germany, Canada, and Australia. In America alone, Victory Gardens provided roughly 1/3 of the country's vegetable supply. Together with the wartime rationing system, this formed the foundation of Britain's wartime economy. The royal family, as a symbol of national morale, was expected to lead by example. So the young princess truly did spend a great deal of her time working in the fields and gardens of Windsor Castle. The deep sense of duty that the British people would later so admire in her may well have grown quietly in that very garden, right alongside the eggplants and cucumbers. Now, about rationing. This was a system that lasted 15 full years in Britain, and of course, the royal family was expected to set the example. This is why, when Elizabeth II married in 1947, her wedding dress was made from fabric purchased using ration coupons that had been carefully saved up over many years. But here is something interesting. On the royal dining table, there was one food that completely escaped the rules of rationing. In fact, there was so much of it in the palace that it sometimes became a bit of a nuisance. That food was smoked salmon. During the war years, smoked salmon became the star of the royal breakfast table. Now, the British people's preferred fish was actually haddock, which comes from the North Atlantic. But because German submarines were blockading British shipping routes, salmon from British Columbia, Canada's westernmost province, became the main source of fish for Britain during the war. British Columbia had been a British colony as recently as the mid-19th century, so its loyalty to the crown was strong. In 1941 alone, the province shipped 2/3 of its entire salmon harvest, over 2,200,000 cases, to Britain. This salmon became a vital source of protein for the royal family, the Allied forces, and ordinary British people alike. Of course, a royal table could not survive on salmon alone, and so Indian cuisine, which uses few ingredients but creates bold and rich flavors, became very popular during the war years. The breakfast most often prepared at Windsor Castle was curry-fried rice made with green peppers, onions, parsley, and plenty of curry powder, served with a soft boiled egg and a generous portion of smoked salmon. This was the meal the young Elizabeth ate most often during her teenage years. The future queen grew up, in many ways, nourished by this very breakfast. Then in 1945, after she came of age, she joined the military. She trained as a driver and mechanic for heavy trucks, and she was reportedly quite skilled at it. During her training, she worked 7 hours every single day at the barracks. But every night, when the ordinary soldiers finished their day and went to sleep, the princess still had to get back in a vehicle and drive back to Windsor Castle. Then the next morning, after finishing her salmon breakfast, she would drive back to the barracks and take her place in line again, day after day. Quite a complicated life, when you think about it. Queen Victoria ruled Britain through the 19th century, the era of the British Empire's greatest power and expansion. This queen, who stood below average height, reigned for 63 years, 7 months, and 2 days. That makes her the second longest reigning monarch in British history, after Elizabeth II. Though she was widowed at 40, she had 9 children with Prince Albert, and through a series of strategic marriages across European royal houses, British influence spread throughout the continent. She truly earned her nickname, the Grandmother of Europe. Beyond her political and military achievements, Victoria was also a passionate lover of food. There is an old British saying, Elizabeth loved sugar, Mary II loved chocolate, and Victoria loved everything else. It is thought that this came from her childhood. Growing up under a strict system of control known as the Kensington system, Victoria ate plain, simple food every day, mostly bread and milk, with very little variety. So, when she finally came to power, her passion for food seemed to explode with no limits at all. Even in her later years, when she suffered badly from indigestion, she never stopped eating and drinking with great enthusiasm. And perhaps it was this very love of food that gave her the empathy to support and promote a legendary military supplement, the famous British beef tea. In 1853, the Crimean War broke out in Europe. Russia was fighting against Britain and France for control over a region in Asia Minor. In the history of world warfare, this was a deeply significant conflict, because modern guns and artillery had entered the battlefield, making the fighting extraordinarily brutal. And for the first time in history, reports from the front lines were sent back to Britain by telegraph. The news was shocking. 90% of soldiers were said to be severely malnourished. The wounded in hospital were in a terrible condition. Queen Victoria was horrified. She personally ordered large quantities of beef tea to be prepared and shipped to the front lines as a supplement for the soldiers. Beef tea was originally said to have been invented by British chef Alexis Soyer. The recipe was straightforward. 450 grams of lean beef, seasoned with spices, simmered slowly in 1 liter of water over a low heat for a long time, then filtered and skimmed of as much fat as possible. The result was a clear, nourishing beef broth, originally made to help patients recover their strength. Now, the upgraded version of this drink came from a man known as the father of modern chemistry and the inventor of the beef extract industry, Justus von Liebig. Using cheap beef from Fray Bentos in Uruguay, he began industrially producing a highly concentrated beef extract, 30 kilograms of beef compressed down into just 1 kilogram of canned product. This expensive concentrate was essentially created for the soldiers fighting in the Crimean War. Along with Florence Nightingale and a team of dedicated nurses, beef tea became one of the most important lifelines for the British soldiers on that battlefield. Of course, using 30 kilograms of beef just to produce 1 can left a lot of room for improvement. The next push came from Napoleon III, the ruler of France across the English Channel. Just as his ancestor had once offered 12,000 francs to incentivize the invention of food canning, Napoleon III placed an order for 1 million cans of concentrated beef. The person who answered that challenge was a Scottish butcher living in Canada, John Lawson Johnston. He created a far more practical and affordable product, a rich, salty, concentrated meat paste, which he first called Johnston's Fluid Beef. It was later officially named Bovril, and Bovril remained one of Britain's most popular instant beef drinks all the way through the second half of the 20th century. Elizabeth I came to power on March 24, 1603, was the last queen of the Tudor dynasty, a royal house that had ruled England for 119 years. The monarchs before her included Richard III, who ended the Wars of the Roses, and the founding King Henry VII, who encouraged trade and grew the economy. Then came Henry VIII, notorious for his enormous appetite and for killing his wives. Then Edward VI, crowned at 9 years old, dead by 15. Then, Mary-Wort, known as Bloody Mary, who burned 300 religious figures alive in her attempt to restore the Roman Catholic faith. And then, Elizabeth. Under her nearly half-century of rule, England entered what is considered the first golden age of modern history. She reformed the currency, stabilized the economy and expanded English influence across the Americas. In culture, thanks to the contributions of Shakespeare, Edmund Spenser, and Francis Bacon, England, once isolated and cut off from the wider world, finally produced its own great artistic and intellectual flowering. But the achievement that stirred the hearts of the British people most came in 1588. In that year, the British Navy defeated Spain, the nation that had created the world's first empire on which the sun never set. When the English fireships at Calais broke through the Great Armada and the news finally reached home, Queen Elizabeth held a national Thanksgiving ceremony on a scale never seen before. And at that great celebration feast, one previously overlooked sweet treat suddenly shone above everything else on the table. In that moment, it established a place for itself in British and Western food culture that has never faded. That sweet treat was the gingerbread man. Now, to tell the story of this short-limbed, cheerful little figure, we need to start long before it took human form. In the year 92 AD, an Armenian hermit monk named Gregory Makar spent 7 years living in a small village called Bondaroy in France. During that time, he taught the local priests and Christians what is believed to be the earliest known gingerbread recipe. Interestingly, this original recipe contained no ginger at all. Instead, it used large amounts of honey, plus cloves, cinnamon, and cardamom. Very little water or fat was added. The goal was to keep the finished product dry so that it could be stored and preserved for a long time. By the 13th century, the first recorded gingerbread bakers appeared in the German city of Ulm. And about 100 kilometers to the north, in the great city of Nuremberg, bakers developed gingerbread-making techniques of such extraordinary quality that Nuremberg came to be recognized by the Western world as the gingerbread capital of the world. One distinctive feature of gingerbread from this era was the use of hartshorn salt as a leavening agent. This substance was, remarkably, produced by heating ground deer antler bones. It made the dough wonderfully light and fluffy and added a gentle mild saltiness to the finished cookie. Now we reach the 16th century. The time of Elizabeth as sugar began to pour in from the plantations of the New World. Sweet things became the fashion of the age. The Virgin Queen herself was famously devoted to sugar. By her later years, her teeth had turned almost entirely black. And yet, at the time, this was actually a mark of status. Only those wealthy enough to afford large amounts of sugar could rot their teeth that way. Meanwhile, ginger, valued for freshening the breath and aiding digestion, finally became an essential ingredient in the gingerbread recipe. And then, at the great feast celebrating victory over the Spanish Navy, the Queen gave gingerbread one final defining touch. She ordered her bakers to stop making the cookies in their traditional round shape. Instead, each cookie was to be crafted to resemble the face and figure of an important guest at the feast. With that single command, Elizabeth opened the door to decorated, personalized, human-shaped gingerbread. After this new human quality was added, gingerbread swept across Britain at remarkable speed. Within just a few years, Shakespeare himself wrote in his comedy Love's Labour's Lost that if there was only 1 penny left in the world, a person should spend it on gingerbread.